Tonight is the 23rd of August, and this is the fourth night we are speaking on the Sutta Nipata. Last night we came up to 3.8, so tonight we start with 3.9, Vaseta Sutta. This sutta is also found in Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 98. Thus have I heard. Once the Buddha was staying in the forest of Ichanangala. Many Brahmins were staying there too. Famous men like Chanki, Taruka, Pukharasati, Janusoni and Todeya, all well-known, erudite and wealthy Brahmins. Amongst these men were two young Brahmins, one called Vaseta and the other Bharadvaja. Now one day, as these two young men were walking up and down, they started a conversation regarding the factors that make one a Brahmana. Bharadvaja said, "It's to do with one's family. If one's family background is pure, and there has been no intermarriage with other castes for 7 generations back, on either one's mother's or one's father's side, then one is a Brahmana." But Vaseta said, "If one's actions are good, and duties are observed, then one is a Brahmana." Bharadvaja stuck to his theory and Vaseta stuck to his. Neither could convince the other that he was right. So Vaseta suggested that they go and ask someone else's advice. "Listen," he said to Bharadvaja, "there is a hermit called Gotama, a prince of the Sakyans, who has renounced his family, and of whom it is said, that blessed one is such since he is accomplished, fully enlightened, endowed with wisdom and conduct, sublime, the knower of worlds, incomparable leader of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and men, enlightened and glorious. He himself, having realized the Dhamma, makes it known to the world of men and gods, including ascetics and Brahmins. He teaches the Dhamma which is good in the beginning, in the middle and at the end, full of meaning, rich in words and wholly complete. He teaches a perfect, pure life. Good indeed is the sight of such arahants." "Well, Bharadvaja," said Vaseta, "let's go to this man Gotama and ask him to clear up this question, and we will take it as the recluse Gotama explains it." "Very well," said Bharadvaja, "let's go." So the two young men went off to look for this master. When they found him, they greeted him politely and sat down on one side. Then Vaseta spoke to the master in these words, "Sir, we are both students of the orthodox teachings, and we are both recognized and accepted as experts in the study of the Vedas. My teacher is Pukharasati, and my friend here studies with Taruka. We have studied all the commentaries on the 3 Vedas, and we are qualified to teach the subjects of meter, grammar and chanting. But even so, Gotama, there is one question about which we are in disagreement, namely the importance of heredity. Bharadvaja insists that a man is a Brahmana because he is born as one, but I am sure that it's what a man does that counts. We want you, who has vision, to know about this argument. Because we can't settle it between ourselves, we have come to ask you about it. We have heard that you are called the fully enlightened one. You are treated with respect by men. They fold their hands when they see you in the same way they go forth to respect the waxing moon. You are the eye of the world, Gotama, so we ask you to look at this question. What is it that makes a man a Brahmana? Is it by birth or is it by what he does? We can't work it out, Gotama. So please explain it to us and tell us what a Brahmana is." The Buddha answered Vaseta in these words, I shall explain to you in proper order and in accordance with the fact the different kinds of living things, since there are diverse species. If you look at trees or grass, although they may not be conscious of it, there are lots of different kinds and species. There are divergent species. Then there are insects, large ones like moths and small ones like ants. With these creatures too, you can see that they are of different kinds and species. And in our 4-footed friends, four-footed animals, whatever the size, you can see that they are of different kinds and species. Now look at the creatures that crawl on their bellies, the reptiles and the snakes. You can see that they are of different kinds and species. Look at the fish and water life. Look at birds and the breeds that fly. You can see that they are of different kinds and species. There is not among men different kinds and species in the manner that they are found among other species. Unlike in other species, there is not among men differences in kind or species with regard to their eyes, ears, mouths, noses, lips, eyebrows, and even their hair. All are of the same type. From the neck to the groin, from the shoulder to the hip, from the back to the chest, it is all of one kind with men. Hands, feet, fingers, nails, calves and thighs are all standard, and so are the features of voice and of color. Unlike other creatures, men do not have characteristics which distinguish them at birth. They do not have the variety of inherited features that other creatures have. In fact, in the case of humans, differences are differences only by convention. For example, Vaseta, if a man keeps cows and lives off their produce, then we know that he is a farmer. We do not call him a Brahmana. Similarly, when a man lives by a particular craft, then we know he is a craftsman. We do not call him a Brahmana. If he supports himself by trading, then we know he is a merchant, not a Brahmana. When a man gets paid for serving other people, then we call him a servant rather than a Brahmana. A man who lives by taking other people's things is known as a thief rather than a Brahmana. And a bowman who sells his skill is known as a soldier. We do not call him a Brahmana. A man whose work is performing rites and ceremonies is known as a priest and not as a Brahmana. And the man who lives off the produce of countries and villages is known as the landlord or a king. We do not call him a Brahmana. I do not call a man a Brahmana just because of his mother or because of his breeding. Just because a man is entitled to be called sir, it does not mean that he is free from habit and attachment. He who is free from attachment, he who is free from grasping, is the person I call a Brahmana. This word Brahmana, here the Buddha means a holy man. When all the chains are shattered, when there is no more agitation, and a man has freed himself and thrown off his shackles, that is the person I call a Brahmana. He who has cut off the strap of ignorance and harness of false views, who has removed obstacles and is enlightened, is one I call a Brahmana. He who, without getting annoyed, endures insults and violence, whose strength and army is endurance, is one I call a Brahmana. There is no anger and there is no ignorance. There is only strength of restraint and the power of pure action. So there is no habitual repetition, no rebirth. This is what I call a Brahmana. Like a water drop on a lotus leaf, a mustard seed on the top of a needle, sense desires roll off and leave no trace in him. It is such a person I call a Brahmana. Losing weight and dropping a chain, here, right here in this world, we can see how even suffering has an end. This is whom I call a Brahmana. One who is deep in wisdom, wise, proficient in what the right or the wrong path is, who has reached the ultimate goal, is one I call a Brahmana. No props, no dependency, no need to mix with other people, whether property owners or wandering monks, the minimum being good enough. This is what Brahmana means. To lay down the weapons of violence, to stop killing any being, to stop causing others to kill any being. This is what Brahmana means. He who shows no anger towards those who are angry, peaceful towards those who are violent, not grasping among those who are bent on grasping, is one I call a Brahmana. He who is wanting, hating, pride and envy have dropped away, like the mustard seed which has rolled off the needle top, is one I call a Brahmana. He who speaks words which are not harsh, and words which are meaningful and true, words which do not arouse another's anger, is one I call a Brahmana. No possessions, no things have been appropriated, whatever the size, quantity or value. This is what Brahmana means. No expectations, not a hankering for this world or for any other. He is untied, released. This is what Brahmana means. An absence of wanting. Questions and doubts disappear in knowledge, and he plunges into the absence of death. This is what Brahmana means. He who has gone beyond the impurity of both merit and demerit, who is free from grief and defilement and is pure. This is what Brahmana means. The clear, calm, stainless, moon-like quality where the shackles of constant becomings are cut and thrown away. This is what Brahmana means. He who has gone beyond the rough and dangerous road of cyclic existence and delusion, who has crossed over and gone beyond the contemplative, passionless and doubt-free, one who is calm without grasping, is one I call a Brahmana. Sense pleasures have gone. He lets them go for the life of a wanderer without a home. The sensual pleasure of constant becoming has gone, thrown away. This is what Brahmana means. Craving, demandings have gone. He lets them go for the life of a wanderer without a home. The hankering after constant becomings has gone, thrown away. This is what Brahmana means. The dead weight on the backs of men, the loads that weigh down even gods, all these burdens are discarded, thrown off and overcome. He is untied from the yoke, released. This is what Brahmana means. Avoiding delight and aversion, he is cooled and free from bases that lead to rebirth. He is a hero who has overcome all the worlds and is one I call a Brahmana. He who has fully comprehended how beings come to be and how they cease to be is unattached, faring rightly and enlightened, is one I call a Brahmana. He whose destiny cannot be known by gods and human beings, the person who has eradicated the passions, a worthy one, is one I call a Brahmana. As for possessions, he has nothing, nothing in the past, nothing in the future, nothing in the present. He does not hold on to anything at all, freed from clinging. This is what I call a Brahmana. A hero, a man of greatness, of prominence, of wisdom, a man of fearlessness and victory, non-attached, washed in the waters of wisdom, enlightened. This is what I call a Brahmana. He knows his earlier lives. He has seen the other forms of life, the woeful states and the happy states. This is the attainment, reaching the end of the chain links of births. This is what I call a Brahmana. So what of all these titles, names and races? They are mere worldly conventions. They have come into being by common consent. This false belief has been deeply ingrained in the minds of the ignorant for a long time. And still these ignorant ones say to us, one becomes a Brahmana by birth. On the contrary, no one is born a Brahmana. No one is born a non-Brahmana. A Brahmana is a Brahmana because of what he does. A man who is not a Brahmana is not a Brahmana because of what he does. A farmer is a farmer because of what he does. And a craftsman is a craftsman because of what he does. A merchant, a servant, a thief, a soldier, a priest or a king, each of them is what he is because of what he does. So the wise men see action as it has really come to be. They are proficient in the fruits of action, and they are seers of dependent origination. The world exists because of causal actions. All things are produced by causal actions, and all beings are governed and bound by causal actions. They are fixed like the rolling wheel of a cart, fixed by the pin of its axle shaft. A Brahmana is a result of self-restraint, wholesome living, and self-control. This is the essence of a Brahmana. So Vaseta, let this be clear. There are people who are wise and experienced in all the three areas of knowledge, who are calm and have finished with the chain links of repeated becoming. These people should be known like Brahma or Indra. Stop it for a moment. These three areas of knowledge, I think the commentary says, is the three Vedas. But in the Buddha's discourses, the three knowledges are the three abhinyas. It's not the three tevijja. The three abhinyas are being able to see the past life. Second, having the divine eye, can see beings dying and taking rebirth according to karma. And the third one is destruction of the asavas. Then Vaseta and Bharadvaja said to the Buddha, "It is amazing, Venerable Gautama. It is wonderful, Venerable Gautama. Just as if one might raise what has been overturned and reveal what has been hidden, or point out the way to him who has gone astray, or hold out a lamp in the dark so that those who have eyes may see objects. So likewise has the truth been explained by Venerable Gautama in various ways. Therefore we take refuge in him, his Dhamma and his Sangha. May the Venerable Gautama accept us as lay followers who henceforth have taken refuge in him for the rest of their lives." So this sutta, the Buddha clarified to the two young Brahmins. To the Brahmins, this word Brahmana means their caste. But because there are no more real Brahmanas, Brahmanas are supposed to be ascetics. First 48 years of their life, they beg for their food, live a life of renunciation and all that, which later Brahmins did not practice. So we differentiate the Brahmins from the Brahmana. The real Brahmana is a holy man, what he's supposed to be. These two young men, Vaseta and Bharadvaja, later became monks. If you remember, in the Khuddaka Nikaya we went through, there's one sutta where they became monks. And then they came to ask the Buddha some question again. The next sutta is 3.10, Khuddaka Sutta. This is also found in Samyutta Nikaya 6.10. This Khuddaka is a follower of Devadatta. Once when the Buddha was staying in the Jetavana monastery at Savatthi, a monk called Khuddaka came up to him and said, "Sir, Sariputta and Moggallana are full of unwholesome desires. They have been quite taken over by unwholesome desires." And the Buddha said, "Khuddaka, don't say such a thing. Have confidence in your mind as far as they are concerned. Sariputta and Moggallana are well behaved." But Khuddaka repeated his accusation against the two disciples. The Buddha replied as before, but the monk again insulted the disciples in the same way. For a third time he was asked by the Buddha not to do so. Then Khuddaka, making a deep bow to the Buddha, got up and went away. He had only gone a short way when he started to feel ill. His whole body came out in boils the size of mustard seeds. These boils began to swell, growing bit by bit until they were as large as peas. Then they grew as large as beans, as eggs, as crab apples, and as quinces. At this point, they burst open, oozing pus and blood. From the illness, Khuddaka died, and as a result of the ill will that he had shown, he was reborn in one of the states of misery which is known as the Paduma or lotus hell. Towards the end of that night, the Brahma Sahampati came to the Buddha and told him how Khuddaka had died and how his ill will had caused rebirth to take place in the Paduma hell. Early next morning, the Buddha called all the monks together to explain what he had been told about Khuddaka's death. "Monks, the life of a being in the Paduma hell state lasts so long that we can hardly describe it in numbers. Khuddaka has taken birth there because of the ill will he had for Sariputta and Moggallana." And as teacher, the Buddha went on to say, "A person that is born is born with an axe in his mouth. He whose speech is unwholesome cuts himself with his axe, with the axe. When a man praises someone who should be blamed, or attacks someone worthy of praise, then this man is accumulating evil with his mouth, and this evil will not lead to happiness. It is little harm if one loses money in gambling with dice, even losing everything, including oneself. But if one bears ill will towards well-conducted ones, it is greater harm indeed. Insulting men of real worth, bearing ill will in thought and speech, leads to aeons upon aeons in the states of misery, means world cycles. Lying leads to these states, doing something and then saying, I didn't do it. This is the same as lying. In terms of death and rebirth, both actions are equivalent. At death, you must face the consequences of unwholesome actions. When a man attacks someone who is peaceful, pure and uncorrupted, then the attack turns back on the foolish man who started it, as dust thrown against the wind. The person who has a greedy disposition insults others with words. He is faithless, greedy, miserly and slanderous. If you are a man like this, untrue and unworthy, slanderous, evil and misbehaved, mean, bad, you had better not talk too much, or else you will come to a state of misery. You are spreading pollution when you act like this. It is an insult to men who do good, and it is a polluted action in itself. If you accumulate actions like this, you will fall into the realm of misery. Why is this? It is because the things that men do just do not disappear into the past. They will come back to us. They will return to their Maker. A man whose actions are polluted is foolish. In time he will feel the pain of it himself. The pain he will feel will be like the pain of iron bars that are thrashing him and iron stakes that are piercing him. In a state like that, what he eats feels like red-hot balls of iron. Nothing there is said that is not hard and painful. Nothing there is said that is not hard and painful. There are no pleasing words of consolation. Nothing offers escape for the sufferers in this state. This state where the world is a furnace, where even a bed is of red-hot ashes. Tangled up in nets, crushed by hammer blows, they are immersed in thick darkness, stretching out on all sides. Then they find themselves in a cauldron, burning and boiling, bubbling up and down in the heat of the furnace, heaving their bodies around. The man of unwholesome deeds is in this state, stewing and boiling in blood and rotten flesh. Wherever he moves to, he rots from the touch of this putrid mash. Then the man of unwholesome deeds boils in water infested with worms. He cannot stay still. The boiling pots, round and smooth like bowls, have no surfaces where he can get hold of. Then he is in the jungle of sword blades, limbs mangled and hacked, the tongue hauled by hooks, the body beaten and slashed. Then he is in Vetarani, a watery state difficult to get through, with its two streams that cut like razors. The poor beings fall into it, living out their unwholesome deeds of the past. Gnawed by hungry jackals, ravens and black dogs, and speckled vultures and crows, the sufferers groan. Such a state is experienced by the man of unwholesome deeds. It is a state of absolute suffering. So a sensible person in this world is as energetic and mindful as he can be. The Paduma hell state lasts a long time. The experts work out its length in terms of the number of cartloads of sesame seeds that would be emptied if one seed were removed every 100 years. They say the cartloads would number 5,120 million. And as long as the woeful states are called woeful by people in this world, for so long will people have to go on living through those states. Take care, therefore, and with pure, wholesome and friendly qualities, constantly watch the movements of mind and the movements of speech. So you can see here the description of hell is very frightening. So a lot of people don't know. They don't like somebody. They like to talk bad about that person. If they knew the consequences, they would very quickly shut up. Not say anything unpleasant. You see that lifespan there, 100 years, you can only remove one seed. Even it's one cartload, how long before you can remove all the seeds from that cartload? But how many here? 5,120 million.